Good evening and welcome to CanHammer, your stop for AOS and 40k from the Great White North. Today's show is episode 71. It's a 40k show with a tiny bit of AOS news, all about Tyranids. This is not the new Tyranids. We're just going into some of the old stuff, maybe helping people win with Tyranids. The new ETC comp came out, and so if you're doing some practice events with a large team, it's a good army to add in to give you variety because you can't duplicate books. So we thought it would be a good topic for this podcast. As usual, I am Chris at CanHammer Chris on Twitter, and today I am joined from Ottawa by Mr.
Logan from OnePlus Armor / CanHammer. It's at OnePlus Logan on Twitter.
And our special guest this evening is
Caleb. I'm not from anywhere in particular other than Toronto, and I'm at Caleb J. Edwards on Twitter.
Cool. So our website is oneplusarmor.com. If you go to canhammer.com, you will still go to the old website, but they are getting combined into one because we have merged. So this is no longer a standalone, department or standalone group. CanHammer is owned by a company called OnePlus Productions, and we do a YouTube channel as well as a podcast in 40k AOS, Batman, War Machine. And so we basically took a whole bunch of little groups that were all kind of somewhat separate and grouped, and we made them into one organization so that we can have a little bit more cross-promotion and help. And so far, so good. So from the user standpoint of this show, you will never see a difference. It's the same old, maybe a slight logo change, and the website will have more information on it. From if you're so there should be no difference whatsoever. If you play for us for an ITC CanHammer team for 40k, that is still staying the same. CanHammer is our 40k playing brand as well, and then the rest of them will be their own groups, I guess, because I don't play War Machine. So, any comments on that, Logan?
No, you pretty much covered it. We'll have a full sort of press release up on the OnePlus Armor site in the next couple days or weeks.
Yeah, we're going really slow as to make sure that all the feeds get migrated together without losing any links or breaking any. Like, we want to do it so that you should never notice. Like, you'll be able to put canhammer.com in your URL and it'll go right to OnePlus, and you should never notice the difference. Like, the logos will be there. It'll just look like a site was updated.
Yeah, everything you have bookmarked and subscribed to and everything is all staying exactly the same.
Yeah, we may have to change some of the music and format, but that's all good. So with that, I guess we'll start by going into our hobby, get our hobby cred on. So I'll hand it to you, Logan. What kind of hobby you been up to?
We're still working on some Tau. Got the new Commander kit, which is a super cool kit. It's a lot bigger than I had thought it was, and yeah. I think it's realistically about the same size as the Finecast kit, but it's much more dynamic and posable now. Well, the old one wasn't really posable at all, so this one's a huge step forward. So, big fan of it. Really nice. Pretty easy to put together. Looks sharp. So, looking forward to painting it up before the tournament this weekend.
Awesome. And that's all you've been doing.
Are you using it as the flying dude or the regular commander, right?
The regular guy on foot. The flying one is hot trash.
I think we talked about that, right? Like, he loses a whole bunch of abilities, and
if he gets grounded, he dies instantly.
What?
It's double his toughness. He's only T4. He's the worst flying monsters creature they've ever put in the game.
He's Tau. It's normal. They're supposed to suck.
Well.
Okay, Caleb, so any hobby cred or any stuff you've been up to the last little while? Because you haven't been on the show in a long time, right?
Yeah, I don't think since the end of ETC last year. So since the end of ETC, I don't want to fill in the whole thing, but I've been going full speed ahead on 40K. So I put together a Tyranid army and took it down to whatever that GT. What are they called in the boys? There we go.
The boys, yeah.
In northern upstate New York, and did terrible. And then recently, I just got into Berry Bash off the waiting list. So I've been putting together a Tyranid list for that, and it involves painting some more flying monsters creatures that are slightly better than Tau commanders, and redoing my display board.
Nice. Right on. And we should point out that he lost horribly, but he was playing a Highlander NID list, which we might get into when we talk about NIDs. It definitely takes all the edge off the Army. And I think if it was more of an ITC format, you probably would have done much, much, much better. But
Uh,
we'll leave it at that. So I guess it goes on to me. I'm working on the same old, getting my Eldar ready. Just trying to highlight them up. I did some test gems. They turned out really nicely on my D batteries. So you base them black. You do like a green kind of half shade on the bottom right. Then you do a nice bright green and a slight white kind of crescent moon on the top left. Hit it with a couple shades of gloss varnish. They look pretty good. And I'm just continuing. I do like piece by piece as I go. So I'm like, I'll do like 2 gems per guy for the first batch through, or 1 gem, and then I'll revisit that unit in a few months and do like 6 more gems. But it's really a struggle to get this army done because they're so finicky, and I keep changing my list to get more competitive. So I've been doing that. I've been working on AOS. So if you're in the live feed, I'm partnering up for Adepticon with a guy named Mike, and he basically has been trying to help me step up my painting. So I want to do a small Stormcast Eternal Force, but I want to do it right. So he showed me a new trick to do basing really well. And so you basically get epoxy sculpt, and you kind of sculpt it, and you put it on top, and you take like a toothbrush and you roughen it up, and that kind of gives the base like a rounded kind of top, and it adds some depth to it. Whereas like when I go back and I look at all my old bases, they're all just like flat gravel. Whereas this, it actually kind of like goes up, and then you step the model in, so there's kind of little divots that go to his feet, and then you kind of fill it in with flock, and you use like sticky tack to fill in the footholes, so that it's like he's standing in the earth a little bit, like he's depressed, and it works out pretty well. He also gave me some tricks on saving money. So epoxy sculpt is basically green stuff. It's a 2-part that you mix. It comes in like 4-pound pails for like pretty cheap. I don't know the exact price, 10, 20 bucks, but it's much cheaper than buying green stuff. It dries rock hard. You get about 15, 20 minutes to play with it, and it's not as sticky as green stuff. Now, I wouldn't use it to sculpt a miniature, of course, but I can't see why you can't use it for filling gaps and things like that. And as long as I think you can still sand it, and you can definitely shave it down with a hobby knife, so it's pretty solid. And then we also, I might have talked about this before, he got me onto the crushed walnut shells as flock. And so if you look at Gale Force 9 sells their flock, I think it's actually crushed walnut shells. And so you can go online, though, and just buy on eBay blasting media that's crushed walnut shells, and then use that. And so I have a 5-pound bag of basically flock that matches. It's the same size as like all my other armies. So I have enough to basically get me through till I die. It's just pretty cool.
And if you're hungry, you could get some in a pinch.
Yeah, it doesn't smell like nuts though. Like it just kind of has no smell. And I was like, this is weird. And the epoxy sculpt doesn't have a strong smell either when you work with it. It's actually really nice to work with. You take a little ball, put it on the base, spread it out. It's fantastic. So I'll keep you guys posted. I have 2 test bases done. We don't have the color scheme ironed out yet, but if you're on the live feed, which sucks for the podcast listeners, you can kind of see, I don't know if you can see the foot divots in it that fit my guy exactly. So you kind of got to make the bases to match the models, but it's pretty cool.
Now, when you make the epoxy sculpt, is it like green stuff where you have the 2 bits and you have to combine in even amounts, or is it?
Yeah. So it comes part A and part B.
Okay.
One's like a grayish and one's like a bluish grayish. They don't really change color when you mix in. You just do an even 50-50. From what I can tell, you don't have to be super precise either, because I just kind of did, a pinch of this, a pinch of that, mixed them together, and it dried rock hard the next day. No issues. So that's
fumes?
No,
like
just
a smell or anything?
Just a slight Play-Doh-y smell.
Okay.
Yeah, like it's not strong at all. Like you would never know if you walk into the hobby room after working with it. You can't. It just kind of smells like when you get up close and sniff it. It has like a Play-Doh-y. It's hard to describe. I've never smelled something like that. But it's not like when you pour epoxy resin, right? Not even close. Which is pretty sweet. That's a nice hobby tip. It really makes a huge difference with the basing. Like I couldn't believe it. Like they actually look dynamic now, and it's something that if you're like an average dude, you probably wouldn't want to do because it's just too much work. But if you're not, it just adds such another. And if you're doing like a big base, you could have like rivets and put like divots and use like he wanted me to use an old toothbrush to kind of texture it already before flocking it to kind of add kind of an unlevel tendencies. And he said he had like 2 or 3 different toothbrushes that were old, and he really banged it up to make it look like there'd be little divots and more natural. And you can take like
Hmm.
skulls and have to press them in like they've been kind of sunken in the mud and things like that. So it's a lot of work, but it's really a nice effect. So I'm glad. Maybe I'll write an article or do a video on that for the channel one day. But it's pretty cool. It's definitely worth the effort. Other than that, too, I started building some Ravenwing bikes and then gave up and contracted somebody out to build my Ravenwing army for me.
It sucks building
So,
those bikes, doesn't it, man?
well, I got some, like, I got a Samuel, Night Shroud, like 15 bikes. I
Yeah.
need a converted librarian. So I just kind of said, you know what? I have to paint the Eldar, I have to paint the Stormcast, and I have to get this going. So, boom, I did that, done. I said, you know what? Maybe I'll contract it out. And I got a guy in Ottawa that does that for me. So, with the kid, it saves you a couple hours a day. And then, so one of the tricks that I want to pass on to people as well that I've been doing is I learned this from Raj from Point Hammered on one of their casts like many years ago. And it's how to paint an army like well if you have like a tight deadline. So I have a tight deadline for what I want to get done. And so instead of taking full days off work, what I do, and I got this from Raj essentially, is I go into work in the mornings, get up early, get the kid ready, drop him off at daycare, go into work, do my usual routine, hit the gym at lunchtime, eat my lunch at my desk till 1 o'clock, and then I take 3 hours off from 1 till 4. I come home, I paint for 3 hours, and then I go pick up the kid at daycare and come back. And by doing that, I've only had to use 3 hours of leave twice a week, and I get a solid 6 hours of painting time. And my wife knows about it, but like she wouldn't if I didn't need to tell her, right? I banked some overtime. Like she wouldn't need to know. Like as far as she's concerned, I was at work all day, and it has no effect on the family. And so it's a good way if you have a little bit extra leave to get your army done. Because what they were finding, what I find is if you take like a whole Friday off, she's like, yeah, like tournament Saturday, I'll take Friday off. Well, you don't really get out of bed. You kind of sleep on the couch. You check the internet. You do eat a breakfast. Maybe watch like a TV show or something. And next thing you know, it's 12 o'clock anyway before you start painting. So that's a little advice, I guess, is if you can force it into like a part of your day where you're like the end of the day, you're usually done half your work anyway. So it's good for you, right? So if you have any other tricks for getting an army done fast, let me know in the chat below, or send us an email, canhammer.podcast@gmail.com. But that's the best one because it doesn't interfere with your routine. I've gotten my weightlifting session done for the day. I've done it all. And that's that. And if the wife, and sometimes my wife will actually pick up the kid from daycare, so I get an extra half hour to an hour to paint, which is 4 hours for 3 hours of OT. So that's it for my tips for this show. I know I went a bit crazy there, but I guess we'll move on to the next section, which is news.
The one thing we should note just before we move on is even though Caleb did get crushed at Du Bois, he was one of the top 8 best painted.
Yeah. But
That's
even
true.
then, getting crushed is relative because Tyranids get flensed under Highlander. So
Yeah.
I'm even reluctant to say that. So we go on to the first set of news we got is we have AOS news. The rest of the Fireslayer range came off. So we have which one there? We have the Fireslayer's Battlesmith and the Grimwrath Berserkers. So I think I grabbed the wrong White Dwarf.
I do not have the rules in front of me. Suffice to say, they are dwarves, and I don't think any of these have neckbeards.
Yeah, so maybe we'll save that for the next AOS show, and maybe we do a more thorough dwarf review, because I'm working on my dwarfs for a certain tournament that's coming up.
So let's talk about one thing with these dwarves, though, because this is something that, I haven't been hands-on with the models, and it sounds like you may have been, but just in general, it looks like these kits are monopose. Like the torso and arms are all the same part of the model.
Mm-hmm.
So you're like there are a few different poses, kind of like there are with the old Fire Warriors kit, but for the most part, what you see on the box is what you get. There's not much room for any sort of customization of pose unless you actually cut them up and green stuff them back together. What do you guys think about that?
I don't mind personally because I'm more of a gamer. I am a super hobbyist, but I hobby to the level that is gaming appropriate. So for me to have 20 guys that are the same doesn't bother me. It's less to assemble, I guess, which is kind of a pain in the butt. But actually, I know what happened. Why I don't have the White Dwarf with their rules in it. It was a rainstorm and freezing rain today, which means that the FedEx guy who brings me my White Dwarf, that usually comes the day of the podcast, couldn't make it to Cornwall because he comes from Ottawa. Bam! So that's why. So next show we'll talk, because there's a few more kits that we missed out on the news. So we'll talk about the rules and all that maybe on the next show with the magma droths and stuff like that. So that's the dwarves. They came out monopose. What do you think of that, Caleb?
To my mind, it looks like I'm just looking at the website now with the guys on it, and it really depends on what type of numbers you're fielding them in, right? Like that was always the problem with Warhammer is you can have the great, like even the new witch elves that they came out with right before they got rid of 8th edition. They weren't monopose because there was like 10 poses, but they only fit together in a certain way. And after you put them together and put them in a unit, you can see, oh, there's all three that have that pose, there's all three that have the next pose, there's all three that have the next pose. But if you're fielding them in units of 5, if you're fielding them in units of 10 and there's 10 poses, it's not bad. It just gets it I notice it when you get past the scale, or when you get past sort of the like basic unit of however many there are. It does start to repeat. I mean, it's still not quite in the like I remember the old days of Warhammer where the gore unit was 30 dudes holding the axe the exact same way.
That wasn't that long ago though, so that was like 10 years ago at the most.
And that's like, for me, one of my favorite boxes that they ever put out was the Empire Militia box, because it was so posable and so you could build so many things out of it, and dynamic looking ones, but they fit together in multiple ways. Whereas I think from that they started, the more recent plastics that they're really dynamic and they look incredible, but they only fit together one way, and it's really hard to do anything more than like chop them at the wrist and do hand swaps and stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now those witch elves were like so hard to rank up; it wasn't even funny. But that's kind of the beauty. As I just built almost every Stormcast Eternal model, minus one, I do believe I have them all, every set. They are somewhat monopose as well, especially the character models. So I think that's kind of the new way, is like, and that's what they had, no extra bits either. Like my Stormcast Eternal bag of bits is like 5 things.
Wow.
Because they just come and they're like puzzle pieces. It's like 8 pieces and they fit in a certain way, and the guy looks fantastic. And that might be the way they're going now, because Pose X character is this guy and Pose Y character is that guy. It doesn't seem like they're duplicating battle scrolls and having multiple models per battle scroll. It seems like they're all distinctly different. So that could be kind of where they're going. It's like a magic card almost, except it's like a model, right? Because the card's the card. It looks the same, but this is a model. And each one is different. That's kind of that's kind of how I feel they're going.
But haven't they done, like, at least on the units, my recollection on the 40K side, unless you are a Space Marine unit, you're generally in a kit that makes 2 things. So like I'm thinking about, especially the like sort of Skitarii and Cult Mechanicus things that came out. Like basically every kit there except the Onager Dunecrawler and those robot dudes makes 2 things, right? Here's this unit, here's a slight head swap and gun swap, here's the other unit, here's the Dragoons that are the walker, here's the shooter walker. And like it does seem like they've tried, even though they go together one way, they've tried to, like, most of their unit boxes at least are 2 things, but I guess not with the Stormcast Eternals.
Well, they are the main box. They have like weapon swaps, but that's it, right?
Okay.
It's not
and they're monopose even with that, right? For the main Stormcast guys, they've either got their shield and their hammer, or they've got their bow, and they all look exactly the same.
Well, it's like the bow or the crossbow, boom, 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 and then there's like the one special bow, just literally is just a different arrow on the bow. And the special crossbow is distinctly different as well, but which is cool. So we'll move on to the next piece of AOS news, which is super exciting to me, because this is exactly what I've been waiting for, and that's that the Grand Alliance's Chaos book came out, which is a fairly cheap book. It's $40 for all the battle tomes, Canadian. So it's probably cheaper in a lot of other places.
27 US.
Whew, that's
Yeah.
actually that's like a
A good
bargain
deal.
if you're a
Yeah.
Chaos player. I find 40 is probably great as well. It's not hardcover, and so the
With the
wicked part
exchange rate,
about this,
the Americans should buy it up here, I think, right? Where
yeah,
Yeah,
close to
pretty close, eh?
40%. Yeah, minus $16.
Mhm.
So yeah, pretty much. The wicked part about it is they basically reclassified all of the Chaos Legions. So if you're like a human and you're into corn, you're a Bloodbound, which is what we kind of said before. If you're like the Beastmen, they are their own kind of sub faction with its own name on the GW website. And then the monsters from the Beastmen book are their own sub faction. So you could do like specific little armies and then fit them together within a grand alliance. And even the Skaven stuff, they have like a clan Eshin, the plague guys. What are they called? Nurgle rot, like they're not rotters. They're
Clan Eshin, Clan Skyer, and Clan. Oh,
do all
how am
three
I?
of them get reclassed though, or was it only a few of
I
them?
think
But
they do. I thought that I saw Clan Skyer stuff
and then like
there.
even demons got kind of like it's chaos demons, and but they separated a lot of these factions out, which makes a lot of sense now, right? So you're basically as we have an
Sorry.
intruder in the camera. So yeah,
Yeah.
you're basically it's kind of where we all thought it was going to go. Where even like destruction, I'm predicting now will go like night goblins, forest goblins, orcs, black orcs, savage orcs, and they'll all be separate sub factions with their own battle tomes released as like hardcover books. So what's your thought on
hmm
that, Logan?
I like the splitting things into grand alliances and having each of the armies in there. I think that's cool. It's good. It makes allies, makes expanding your collection really straightforward. I really do not like how they've split this stuff up though.
Why?
Because now if I want to play demons, like let's say I like demons. I'm coming from 40k, for example, or I'm coming from fantasy. I like my demons. I now have one, two, three, four, five, six, 7 different armies that I have to search through just to find the models I want to buy. And
Well,
it's
you can
super
click on the whole
confusing.
range.
You can
if
click
you
on the whole
want.
range, yeah. But if I only want to see demons, I have to select all 7 of those individually. And I just from looking at this, if I want to, okay, let's go into like the Skaven stuff for example. If I want to get my clan rats, am I looking in Clan Skyer, Molder, Pestilence, Eshin? I have no idea. As someone who doesn't follow the fluff, I have to go through all of these to try to find what I'm looking for. It doesn't make sense.
That's a
It's
good
a
point.
UX nightmare on the website.
Who has clan? Who has the clan rats?
I will try to find out.
Or do they all have clan rats? Right?
They don't all. I can tell you that. Skyer doesn't. Of course, you have to re-click on everything as it goes through, which is the pain.
On the mobile, I'm not gonna lie. On the GW mobile, is not so great. On the main computer, it's fine.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm on my desktop, but
so
The only thing I'd say, and I'm not usually someone to defend Games Workshop on stuff, but uh, it seems to me that like with uh, AOS now, you're not, you don't need to get clan rats. Like you're almost coming with like, okay, I want clan rats, but the reason I want clan rats is because I'm doing like a clan Eshin force, and I know that they need them, or I'm doing clan Skyer, and I know they need that. Like
oh yeah,
you're,
yeah. I'm just using
it's
them as an example though, and to answer the question, they're not actually under any of them,
oh,
nor are they under Master Clan. They're just not there.
yeah,
So
okay.
previously I
Maybe
click
they
on
haven't been
Skaven.
reboxed.
Well, possibly, but I mean, my point is, previously I click on Skaven, I'd find all the Skaven stuff because I want my little rat men. Now it's a crapshoot between 5 different things.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so yeah, for buying them, it might be a little bit of a change, but I just like the fact that I could be like, I really like corn demons, but I don't want to do a full army of them. I can do kind of like the sub faction and make them kind of fit together and kind of like a kind of fluffy, cool, do something neat, and then I can add in like a Nurgle force that's like the Rotbringers, and they're all like, instead of just being like, well, this is my generic demon book, I can mix whatever I want. It's like each kind of group has its own fluff, and they're divided, and I can be like, this is my Nurgle little faction led by this warlord, and this is the Corn warlord, and he's gonna kill the Nurgle, and it's just kind of cool. I don't know. It just seems like it's more thematic, and it just feels better. It's like some units just didn't fit before. I found like in the grand scheme of things, and this kind of gives every unit like a purpose within its own little sub faction. And I don't know. I'm pretty happy about it. Caleb, what do you think overall?
I like it. I think I'm going to get the book. I just think it's a cool idea. I like the idea of being able to go and have one book that I can flip through and like here's all the units and hopefully, I mean, we'll see how much is done, but like I like the idea of having sort of cross uh like if you have the Chaos Grand Alliance, then you could have Clan Pestilence plus Nurgle. Does that, like how much does that help? Or Skyr and Zeech maybe, or like are there units that they could have cross synergies, and yet you could still have sort of a rat based synergies, but also Nurgle based synergies, that type of stuff. I think that'd be a fun way to do it. We'll see how much they do it, but I think it's fun to just get a lot of units in one book too.
Yeah, it's really neat. I hope they do it with all the factions. Flush them. Like we were talking today, it would have been nice if they would have moved Beastmen over to like Destruction. That would have been kind of interesting. Get them because they're their own little sub faction. They don't really fit into Chaos. They could have rewritten their fluff and moved them over. And I'm really hoping that the undead get defined. Like we already kind of saw that with the starter kit. Ethereals are called their own thing now. I forget the name of them, but so they're going to see like an ethereal faction. You're going to see like different vampire factions. And was it you, Caleb, that said you heard the rumor that each vampire is going to be its own type of undead army or something?
That was Nick, I think. It wasn't me, but
Oh, so that's completely unreliable then.
It is, but at the same time, it wouldn't surprise me, right? It makes sense given how they've split things up. You'll have the Lamian. It'll be like the old
the families
the
or
old
whatever.
VC books, yeah, with the the families,
The
the
bloodlines.
bloodlines, yeah. So you'll have like the Von Karstein stuff. You'll have the Lamians. Maybe we'll see the Blood Dragons and the Necrarchs again.
Yeah, and then there'll be like Nagash's line or whatever, which is the
Yeah, that's where you get
Carrion,
like the Morghasts and all that stuff under it.
which is cool. And then nice if like the spectral stuff will probably be its own faction, which is neat. And then they'll probably have something else. So that's
Yeah.
cool.
Now, I think one thing to clarify, because somebody in chat brought this up, is that it's confusing for new players. From a rules perspective, this stuff doesn't change. The War Scrolls are exactly the same. This just boils down to how it's listed. Effectively, they're sorted by keyword now.
Yeah, keyword, and then they got repackaged with round bases, or are about to be, or most of them have been. And some of the boxes got repackaged with more models for less money, but which is pretty cool. Some of the older stuff, but the newer stuff's more expensive. So
yeah, but
They've had the
effectively,
molds
if you
for long
were
enough.
if you were Chaos before, you're still Chaos. If you were Destruction, presumably you'll still be Destruction. So there isn't too much different there.
and that's why with our events locally, we're moving to the 4 grand alliances now.
Yeah.
Because before it would like hurt people that were already split, but now it's like you can't do it because if you limit guys to 2 detachments within their own grand alliance, it's like if you want to do something fluffy, like Caleb said, the double Nurgle, you're limited by unit choice, pretty small.
Yeah.
Well, Nurgle's a bad example because they're one of the biggest ranges, but you know what I mean.
Yep.
So I'm gonna head off to Logan for the 40K news and rumors.
All right. So there's two big things for the news. First off, there are Space Wolves coming. You saw that coming. A couple new models. There's some new Forge World stuff coming out. Some of the characters. I cannot remember the guy's name, but it's the dude who turns into a werewolf. And apparently he has gotten worse from a rules perspective in every way from all of his previous releases. Don't get too excited, but the model looks super great.
Okay.
Outside of that, there's a Wolfen box coming, or kit that includes Wolfen. It's not clear what else is necessarily coming out for that yet, but I'm sure we'll find out over the next couple of weeks. So we should see some releases for that in February.
I thought I'd read that it was some sort of campaign, sort of similar to Monk Kao and Kayan and that type of stuff.
Yeah, so that's the current news is the campaign book. So it's not. Nobody knows what that's going to include right now. There don't seem to be too many rumors on that front. But as far as models, yeah, there's the campaign book coming. The only other big piece of news that I've come across recently is that apparently after Blood Bowl for Specialist games, we're getting Adeptus Titanicus.
Wow.
If you don't want to pay $300 for your Warhound Titan, you can get one that's about yay big and hopefully play with it. So I think that'll be pretty cool.
Yeah, like that's more of and do you know what stemmed from Adeptus Titanicus back in the olden days? Epic. So this is like step 1, redo Adeptus Titanicus. Step 2, redo Epic, and then they mix together as one game, and that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, so looking forward to that.
I'll buy it all, even though I buy all their games, but it's like I don't play them because I don't have enough time. But it's just like so nostalgic to own like Space Hulk and stuff.
Yeah.
And even though Dreadfleet, I feel like I own Man of War now, but it's not really the same. But
I'm just waiting for them to come out with the or redo the Tyranid epic stuff because some of those models were really really cool. Get stuff like the Dominatrix, and if you actually did it at 40K scale, it would be like the size of a car.
yeah, that'd be awesome. Epic's really fun. It's one of those games that's more I found it like very abstract
Yes.
and like it's cool though. It's different. It has its place in a campaign environment, and it's more of a board game, which is I'm totally cool with. So that's that. So I guess there's been nothing out of Forge World really the last 2 weeks.
Not that I stumbled across, apart from the Space Wolf character. So
Yeah.
There's there was pictures up of Alpha Legion add-ons for the Betrayal at Calth Marines.
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
So like you can get the helmet and shoulder pads and gun or whatever.
Yeah,
And
which
it's
is kind of
supposed
cool,
to be-
but
It's supposed to be some type of unit that like I mean, Alpha Legion doesn't really make sense from a gameplay perspective because how do you have a like oh well, my unit's been infiltrated in your town for 3 days and I already freaked everybody out so we don't have to fight. Like that
Yeah.
doesn't work in a like rules perspective. In the end, everybody just lines up and fights, but that's what these guys are supposed to be, the like super behind the scenes guys or whatever.
yeah, and you would hope like Alpha Legion should have its own book because they would have so many human auxiliaries. Like they would infiltrate command staff of battalions and guard companies, and I think that they're one of the factions that could never truly be represented in the game, which is kind of sad.
I just reverse of the Orc and Goblin animosity on a 6. I take over your unit for the turn.
Yeah. Well, like I could see like they did like the you could have big groups of infiltrating cultists or something like that. That might add some flavor to the game and make them good. But I'm gonna put you on the spot, Logan. Did you hear about that 40K army that apparently won a tournament that was the zombie horde with typhus?
How recently are we talking?
I don't know. They brought it up on Frontline like yesterday, and I was like, just thinking about it, and I couldn't find the reference or anything, and I don't know. I shouldn't have put you on the spot for it. But.
Kenny Boucher from various different things. Most people listening probably know who he is. He has a big heart on for typhus and plague zombies, and he brings them to lots of events, and he does very well with them. So he basically runs like a Chaos Super Friends kind of thing, like a Chaos character spam, double sorcerers, double spawn star, basically, and then shitloads of zombies. And it does well. Like they're good at holding objectives. They're fearless. They've got feel no pain. Really, unless you're coming up against a lot of strength 6 shooting, they've got some good staying power. So that may have been in reference to him, but I mean, depending on what event it is, how many players there are, how many rounds they are, it's like we saw at Bloodbath last year. It's possible for some really weird stuff to place really high.
Yeah, like the more games you have, the more I guess that the bad Eldar matchup doesn't hurt you or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So I guess that's it for news and rumors. Anything else to add, or are we all good?
That's all I got. Been
Cool.
busy.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess we've all been kind of busy. So we're gonna go to the event spotlight for the next 4 weeks. So the first event coming up, which will be never talked about again on this show, is this weekend. We have the Big Boys Broken Bones. We'll bring that up. It's a 40K tournament in Ottawa. If you're listening to the live stream, sign up. They have 2 openings right now. That'll be, irrelevant in 4 days. So if you're listening to this the day the podcast is released, you have 2 days. So if you do live in Ottawa and you're hearing this, you could still probably register or even maybe show up the day of. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's pretty good. It'll be like a $500 grand prize.
Yeah, it's $500 store credit, tax free for first prize, $200 for second, and $50 for third.
Which is really awesome. Pure ITC missions, everything, no modifications. Next one, Logan, what's the Petawawa tournament?
Just a small RTT up in Petawawa. I think we've got like 12 or 14 people. Just meeting at one of the local hobby stores up there, Perkins Hobby House, which is a pretty cool place.
And that's the 13th and 14th?
It's the 6th or 7th of February, whatever the Saturday is. The 6th.
So Super Bowl weekend?
Yeah, Super Bowl weekend, so no good. Cool, and then the next one that we have coming up next 4 weeks is P&P, which is on the 20th of February.
Yep.
And that's a modified ITC 40K tournament that you're running that is sold out as well, right?
Sold out with a 10-person wait list.
Oh!
Yeah, it's a 26-man tournament, which is capacity for our venue. actually two more people than we had last time, and it was pretty packed. So we're trying to rearrange the tables this time to make sure everyone can be comfortable.
Cool. So I guess we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to talk about Tyranids, which will be the main segment. Oh, okay, so I forgot to mention Wapaka. So that's a event in Wisconsin, which is in the northern United States. It's a really good event put on by the Point Hammer guys. I went last year. I can't go this year due to family stuff. So that's coming up.
The worst.
It's either I think it's this weekend or the weekend after. So if you want, go check that out. I think it's links to that are from pointhammer.com or it might be wapaka.com as well. It's a really fun time. A lot of drinking, a lot of narrative events this year. And Infinity, I think Infinity is the big event this year. But there's like narrative 40K, narrative Malifaux, and lots of cool stuff like that. So definitely check that out for next year.
And they were always big on painting, right? Like that's one of their big.
Hobby.
Yeah,
Yeah.
huge on the hobby. Mike is the guy that showed me how to do the basings. He's part of their crew, things like that. So yeah, definitely check that out. It's pretty sweet. So now we're going to get into the Tyranid Codex review. So this is going to be broken into a couple parts. We're going to go through the main book, somewhat high level, go through all the units, what generally they do, if you should watch out for it, if you shouldn't. Then we're going to move on to all the formations and all the different campaign supplements. And then we're going to kind of give generically how to run the list, as well as question and answers from both the chat and Twitter. I got a few. Most of the questions on Twitter were suicidal at best. We did get another Pimp My List submission, but we won't have time on this show, and we'll have to work on that one on the next one. But it's kind of interesting because there's lots of different opinions for that. So I guess we'll get right started into the Tyranid book. So generally, the Tyranids are the bugs from Starship Troopers manifested into the Warhammer 40,000 universe. For those of you that are new to the game, these are like basically the Zerg from StarCraft. I think the Zerg were actually based off them because it's rumored that StarCraft was supposed to be a Warhammer 40,000 game.
Yeah, very, very specifically, the Zerg were based off these guys.
Yeah, so they're
and
very
then they
cool.
were based off aliens, right? That's the at least the first H.R. Geiger and the original aliens is what they were going for.
All the Rogue Trader Nids are like they may as well be Geiger artwork.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a pretty cool book. It's been around in the universe. It's kind of like a main staple. They go around and they consume all the biomatter on planets and just kind of kill everything. They're very scary to have in your segment. You know, Imperial civilizations will abandon entire systems if they can't defend against the Tyranids. It's probably the scariest bad guy in the universe that has the least amount of fluff because it's really hard to write fluff about guys just shooting hundreds of bugs and then getting overwhelmed and killed. There's very few battles that people successfully won against the Tyranids, fluff-wise. One of the big ones was the battle for, it was McCraig, where the Ultramarines, basically their whole chapter, did a last stand, I guess, and were able to survive. But that's a very rare. Usually the Nids do consume and do kill. So that, keeping in mind that they're the most powerful race in the fluff, we'll move into the book now. So when you open the book, you get to the HQ section, and what's the first choice?
The best choice. The only choice.
Yeah.
Hive Tyrants.
So what's a Hive Tyrant do, and what's he good for? Who wants to take that one? Logan?
I'll run with that one. This is actually one of my favorite. Ever since these guys came out, they've been one of my favorite models, and that doesn't change with the new ones. So Hive Tyrants are basically the guys that control these the Tyranid forces when they're down on the planets fighting stuff. They whip everyone into line. The old model actually had a big whip on it. So these guys are monstrous creatures. They've got Scything Talons. They're a Master Level 2 Psyker. They have Shadow in the Warp, which is actually pretty nasty when you force people to perils. And they're a Synapse creature, which is really, really key with Tyranids if you are not running the net list.
So what is a Synapse creature? Just to put it out there once.
Sure. So Tyranids are one of the armies that's very early 6th edition in their writing, in that they have special rules that are specific to their army that are incredibly detrimental to them, much like Chaos. Yeah. So basically the way Synapse works is if you are out of range of a Synapse creature, basically the Tyranids have a hive mind kind of thing, and the little dudes don't work unless they get the commands from the bigger guys, the Synapse creatures. If you're outside of Synapse in game terms, it means you have to take a leadership test, and if you fail, you roll on a chart and see how badly you screw up. None of which are really useful outcomes.
But the leadership's very low, correct?
Yeah, leadership for the stuff that is not Synapse creatures is generally around 5 or 6. There are a couple exceptions, though.
Yeah, the one thing being, it's much worse, and it's weird the way they do it because it's supposed to be a horde army, but your hordes are way worse outside of Synapse because they have lower leadership, and they're more likely to eat themselves and stuff like that, depending on what type of creatures they are. Whereas your monsters are actually usually higher leadership. They're like there's a bunch of them that are leadership 10, even if they're not Synapse creatures, and all of the tables you roll a d6, and the 1 to 3 result has something that happens that's extra bad, but it usually only applies if you're a unit of more than one model. And since your monsters are almost always single models, they just bump up to the 4 to 5 result, which isn't as bad.
Yeah. Yeah, so generally they range from either they kill other models in the unit, or they find the nearest cover and hide there, or they just screw off the table.
Yeah. So this guy, back to the Hive Tyrant, he's pretty cheap for his stat line, 165 points.
Yeah, 165 points, really high weapon skill, strength, toughness 6, 4 wounds, initiative 5, leadership 10.
Psychic Mastery, as you already said, that's huge, right?
That's not what he costs, though. He costs 240 points. That's
He costs
we'll get into that. Yeah. So what's the best way to? So is there only one way to take this guy, or is there multiple ways?
There, really competitively, there's only one way, and that's to give him wings and twin-linked devourers with brain leech worms. Non-competitively, you can run this guy however you want. He's really cool on foot. He's really cool with wings and extra weapons. Because he can take any of the biomorphs, any of the bio artifacts. So there's a lot of really fun ways to run him. But realistically, the only way you're usually going to see this guy on a tabletop is with wings and the double twin link devourer with brain leech worms.
So, and the other thing you want is the sorry.
Oh, just before you start, I was just going to say we're only going to talk about the optimal ways to run it. Because as Logan said, you can run anything you want in the entire game for fluff purposes, and then you can run whatever you think looks cool and whatever's awesome to you. Like, so there's no point talking about all the options because we only care about the competitive one. And then, because if you're the type of guy that's going to take the on-foot guy, blah blah blah, and fluffy, then you don't actually care how effective he is in game, right?
Yeah, and the other part of that is with this book especially, it's really difficult because the amount of ways you can customize these units is nearly endless. It's like the old school codexes. Now, we have lost Caleb here, so we'll move on without him, but for those of you on the stream, that is why the overlay is a bit screwed up right now. So, wings, double devourers with brain leech worms. It's 12 shots, strength 6, twin linked on BS 4. It's hitting 11 times, it wounds a bunch of stuff. You can give him haywire as well, which is pretty nice.
Well, that's the, isn't that the brain leech worms, the haywire?
I think so, yes. Yeah, something like that. It's a couple one-use only ones.
So they're pretty good. They fly, they come on the board, they can pop essentially a tank a turn or kill like an MSU bike unit or cripple something. They're very, very, very effective, and if you take 6 of them, it's pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll talk about some of the detachments later on, but generally you want minimum 3 of these in a competitive list. More often than not, if you're doing really well with NIDs, you're going to have probably 5.
Sounds good. So I guess we'll move on to the Swarm Lord. Now this is in 5th edition, this guy was like a top-notch character. He was a combat monster. He did lots for the army. But in this, he's just a mastery level 3. He's a good combat character, but he's on foot. Not really that effective in game. Because as we said earlier, you want the Flyers, right?
Yeah, so the thing with the Swarm Lord is that with the bone sights, I think it is. This guy's got 4 attacks. He'll get 6 on the charge. You can give him Ymgarl factor to give him extra strength, extra attacks, what have you. And just with some of the upgrades and the attacks, weapon skill 9 especially, this guy is hitting. He's got a good chance of instant deathing stuff. They can be pretty cool, but yeah, they are definitely slow.
Longer a special character, correct?
So you cut out there.
Oh, he's no longer a special character, correct?
Correct. He is a monstrous creature character, so he cannot join units.
But you can duplicate them like crazy now.
You can take as many of them as you want. Yeah.
Nice.
Well, based on your detachment.
Okay, so the next one in the HQ is the Tyrant Guard Brood. 50 points each. These are basically the old school. They have their shields and swords. You generally never saw them in the olden days. You generally will never see them now. They're just too expensive for essentially a blade of wounds on a foot kind of monstrous creature.
I'm back. Sorry.
Okay, Caleb. So we're on the Tyrant Guard brood. We kind of went through the Swarm Lord and how he's kind of okay, but he's on foot, so he doesn't fit with the army with the Flyrants. So what's your take on the Tyrant Guards, Caleb? Uh-oh.
So on the Tyrant, I talked about this already, but we wanted me to say you can take a Tyrant Guard for every Tyrant you take, but there's no rule that they have to be deployed together. So if you wanted to, you can get a 50-point, 2-wound, toughness 6 model with a 3+ save that you can run out to objectives and stuff like that. If you're trying to think outside the box.
That's fair. Yeah, I guess I don't use Force Orgs, so...
Yeah, they're just outside of the thing, so you could take one for every, if for some reason you were flying...
It says in your army, though, right? Like, does in your army mean in your detachment or in your overall force?
That depends on which FAQ you're playing with. So keep in mind, this is written for the 6th edition rulebook. Even there, it was a bit of a gray area. Generally, for all the major FAQs, so ETC and ITC, Army refers to each detachment. Either way, if you're splitting these across multiple detachments, it doesn't really make any difference because they sit outside the FOC. So, if you've got a Hive Tyrant, you can take one of these.
Okay, so you would take 5, and then I guess they sound okay, but they don't contribute much to your game. If you took 5 of them, it'd essentially be 250 points of scoring units that don't do anything, right?
Yeah, they just go sit there. That's the idea. Yeah, there's something they can sit on a objective, but I'm not. It's sort of the problem is the 3-up save, right? That's the toughness 6 is great, but your just volume of fire is going to get you.
Yeah, so that's something to keep in mind going through this entire book, and unfortunately one of the big weaknesses of Tyranids is I think barely anything has better than a 3+ save, and nothing, I don't think, has an invulnerable save.
Yeah, it's almost impossible.
Except for zone throps. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
All right, so next up after that, we've got one of the coolest models that's ever been in the Tyranid line, and one of the worst things that's ever been in the Tyranid book.
Yeah.
Old One-Eye.
The crab claw guy?
The crab claw guy, yeah. So this guy had some really cool rules back in like the 3.5 edition NID books. He's definitely fallen to the wayside. I don't know how he was in 4th or 5th edition, but he's basically a Carnifex. So he's weapon skill 3, strength 10, T6, again with a 3-up save. But initiative 2, he does have crushing claws. He's got regeneration, the NID regeneration.
The NID regeneration then. Because that's a common theme. I was going to bring it up for the Hive Tyrants. What is the NID regeneration? Like, why would you take it?
Right, so going off memory, I think it's either a 5+ or a 6+. It's basically it will not die, but you roll it for each wound you've taken or something like that.
Yeah, you regain a wound. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you will never see Old One-Eye unless it's painted very nicely in someone's closet. Sadly, it's mostly because he's 220 points for basically a Carnifex, and the good Carnifex builds right now are not the close combat ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So the next guy is a Turvagon. This was a staple in 5th edition. Fantastic. You can still run these guys as troops, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, you can. If you take 30 Termagants, you can take one of these as troop.
And so their whole thing is that they're like the brood mothers of the Termagants, give birth to them, and then you have tons of scoring units, and they keep pumping out units throughout the game. What do you think of them, Caleb?
It's a good idea. I would prefer it as a troop than as a HQ, just because then you got a monstrous creature that can go be OBSEC in a CAD, but I think one game. So they spit out Termagants every turn, but anytime you roll 3 dice, that's how many you spit out, and if you roll doubles, you're done for the game. I have made it to turn 2 once with spitting out Termagant. It's just I've rolled doubles every single time at the get go, and then you got a monster that's it's a psyker. It gives synapse, but if you're going to take a monster, this is 195 points. Can you find 45 points and take a flying Hive Tyrant instead? Probably.
Yeah.
But is there no room in the book for, let's say, taking 5 of these guys and just pumping out 5 scoring units per turn?
So the
But the
problem,
thing is,
And then you take
it's
like a second CAD and take flying Flyrants, or
I would. Well, you couldn't. If you're taking max Flyrants, then you are close to. Uh, you're close to 1,000 points already, and you've got. You can't put 5 of these guys in because that's 1,000 points as well. So, and for each one that's troops, at least you got to put 30 Termagants in. So, yeah, I guess if you're willing to paint 200 Termagants that will shoot at stuff and bounce off everything, you could do it. But it wouldn't be my first choice. And you're looking at worse than the Green Tide, right? They just hang on, let me move 100 Termagants in separate units towards you.
yeah, that's one of the big things, right? Is you're spending 120 points on Termagants, and then you're spending, was it 195 points on the Termagon, and you're only able to fit 3 into a CAD because they do take a troop slot when you take these. And the other big thing to remember, Chris, as well, is the Termagants they spawn while they're scoring, they're not OBSEC because they're outside of your detachment.
yeah, and then one thing that I was a point that I was getting to that I wanted to bring up was that so you take a 195 point guy, and then on average you're getting what is it, 10 of them, 10 guys out of it a turn.
Yeah, until you doubles out.
Yeah,
and then so on average you should get 2 turns which is 20 guys. So you're essentially playing 195 points for a monstrous creature and like 60 points of dudes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually not worth. That's kind of the point I was getting at. It's actually not worth it.
Doesn't work out on the points. And the other thing to keep in mind, of course, is when this guy dies, there's synaptic backlash, everything around him. I think it's all the units that spawned or something. You roll a leadership test and you just take that many wounds.
anything that's a Termagant. So
okay, there you go.
The 30 guys that you brought to get it, they can also take wounds.
But that's is they kind of ruin the whole thing with if they didn't fail on doubles and they just always spit them out and maybe the thing took a wound, then it would be amazing. That's what I was kind of trying to get at.
Yeah.
So we'll move on to the Tyranid Prime. So this is basically a Tyranid warrior that's on crack, right?
Yes. So the Tyranid Prime is pretty awesome. It's 125 points. This guy's like a mini. What was the guy we talked about earlier? The Hive Swarm Lord, something like that.
Swarm Lord, yeah.
Yeah, but basically, as Chris said, it's a Tyranid warrior on crack. So strength 5, toughness 5, weapon skill 6, 4 attacks. Devour, Scything Talons. You can take any of the bio artifacts, weapons, bioweapons, what have you. He is an independent character, so you can join this guy to units, which is pretty great. So toss him in with some stuff that's actually killy, and that's wonderful. Again, he's a synapse creature, shadows in the warp. So this guy's not bad. You won't see him super often, but if you do, he's worth watching out for. It's pretty killy, and it's a good way to spend 125 points on cheap HQ.
Can you make him shooty?
A Hive Tyrant. Comes with a Devour.
Can you give him like the double Twin Link Devours?
No, he can only take basic bioweapons or melee bioweapons.
So he can't take any of the good stuff. Okay, because that'd be needed because he's an independent character. You could even put him in 30 gaunts and kind of have like a 30 wound shield for this either combat or shooting guy, which I thought would be kind of cool. But
it's just also though he's toughness 5 and a 3-up save, so anything with strength 10 that's usually AP 1 is doubling him out, and then you've got.
That's why you put the gaunts in front of him and you double out the gaunts, and then he just kind of goes woo.
Yeah.
So cool. So what's the Death Leaper do, Caleb?
Death Leaper is a super lictor, although he's basically lictors are the I guess they're sort of them and Gene Stealers really come from the old Aliens theme, and they're the ones that can camouflage anywhere, and they show up and they eat everyone, but he's essentially a lictor on a little bit of steroids. He doesn't have. He's not a synapse creature. He doesn't have to test or anything. Like he's still a character, so he can run around on his own. But he's not going to give synapse. He's not a psyker. He just has a good cover save, and he can deep strike without scattering. But I would doubt that you're going to see it except in the one with the formation where you have to take Death Leaper and a bunch of lictors. I think it is.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of it, but yeah, it's like him and four or five lictors.
And he is unique, so you can only take one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's HQs. So what I heard from that, from the two experts, is you only take Flying Hive Tyrants if you're really interested in competitive play. But there are a few other guys that are notable to watch out for. One being maybe the Tervagon, not really, but one being the Tyranid Prime, who is a really good combat animal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, the Death Leaper, if you're using a formation that we might talk about where they all come up and attack you from behind. Cool, so we go on to the troops. First ones we have is the Warrior Brood. These guys are basically Space Marines with 3 wounds and a 4+ save, so they're not Space Marines at all. They can be run a couple ways. They can be run shooting. They can be run combat. When I play against these guys, I kind of look at them and see them as free points. Easy to kill, easy to take off. They're not overly scary. The issue that I had with these guys is they did cost me a game in a tournament once because my Wraith Knight shot his decans at them and missed and then failed his 4-inch charge. But that was a fluke. So do you ever use these? Or
Not
I
since
don't-
3rd edition.
Yeah, I don't own a model for them. There was no point in buying it. And the times, even when I played Tyranids in tournaments, even at Du Bois, I played a Tyranid guy, and I was like, oh, Tyranid Warriors, I can get those points for sure, even with my terrible other Tyranid stuff.
Yeah, cool. So I guess we'll just pass them then, right?
Yeah, Tyranid Warriors have a weird spot where they're not good, and there is a better version of them that's still not good that you can take in a different slot for the Shrikes that we'll talk about.
Yeah.
But yeah, all these guys bring is Synapse, and realistically, you don't need it so much. So a key thing to remember as we talk about the troops section of this is with NIDS, you're going as few points as possible in troops. If you're going troops heavy, you're probably not building a win.
Cool.
Yeah.
So next is what?
The best thing ever in all of Tyranids, Gene Stealers, which are also the worst thing. There's a lot of worst things in this book, sadly. So yeah, these guys come with or can also have the Brood Lord, which is another cool model. Close combat, just monsters. They're weapon skill 6, strength 4, or 5 on the Brood Lord. 2 attacks, rending claws, infiltrate, move through cover. They can take toxin sacks. They have poison attacks. They can get. They've got. Yeah, I think I said this. They have fleet. They can get scything talons. They got double weapons. It's. They're just really, really good. Problem is they're pricey. They're like 12, 13 points a model. They have a 5+ save and nothing that boosts their cover or armor save at all. And they only move 6 inches a turn. Plus their run.
They're never
That's
going
where
to
they
get
messed up.
Yeah.
I think these guys should have shrouding or stealth.
They should have, if they want to fit this unit to the fluff, they need to have infiltrate, they need to have scout, and they need to have shrouding. It's the only way they work. 'Cause the whole thing with these guys is they're lurking around in like these space hulks or in cities, and they're just snatching dudes and eating them and stealing their genes. Hence the name. There's a great Mac Hall strip about that if anybody's ever read that webcomic. But yeah, the rules do not fit the fluff, and they never have, I don't think, outside of either the Space Hulk game or Rogue Trader, sadly. But
Well, even in the Space Hulk game, they die really, really easily, right? Well, it's like a 6, but that's what
they're
you hit
fighting
on.
Terminators, though. So
But it's
It
like,
yeah, that's a good point in the chat. If these guys were beasts, they would be godlike.
yeah, Beast
It
would be cool.
It might be overpowered, but the other thing I would give them is the Lictor style Deep Strike.
Yeah.
Deep Strike with no scatter would be, sort of a fluffy way of like, oh no, you just walked into the room and here's a bunch of Gene Stealers that just appeared.
Yeah,
Cool.
the issue I have with them is like in 5th edition, I know I'm bringing that up a lot because that's when NIDS were essentially still playable. I'm not saying they're not playable now, but that was when they were decent. Like they'd come in from the side and they could like just charge you, right? Whereas now they can't, so they come in and then they just die, and it's like, but when they do actually charge you, they kill everything they touch. It's just a matter of like, can they get there? So
yeah, Initiative 6, these guys are killing a lot of stuff.
And at 7 points a model, they're almost too expensive now.
Steelers, they're like they're more than that. It's five for 70.
Sorry, 5. I meant yeah. You
Yeah.
know what I meant. Okay, cool. So yeah, you're right. Like they're way too expensive. They're like Marine standards, but they don't have the survivability of Marines.
Yeah.
So next we move to the best troop choice in the book, right, Caleb?
It's not well. The best troop choice in this book. That's the answer, I think. The Termagants, like my view would be, if you're really building troops, Tyranids, you either go a ton of monsters or you go a ton of bodies, and at least Termagants you can get a lot of bodies that shoot a little bit at you. But yeah, that's about it. They're tiny bodies. They have low leadership, and you just do it with volume.
Yeah.
Cool. So would you take like 2 of these or 6 of them? 10-man units.
I think if I took them, which I would, because we're going to get to it later, I wouldn't take them, but I'd probably take them if I was taking them, I would probably take, you're talking, I would want a unit of 20 or 30, because that's how you survive. And like if I saw a 10-man unit of this, that's fine. You can kill that, no problem. But like 30, you can scare it off the board likely if you can kill the Synapse. But if it's in Synapse and you can't kill the Synapse, it's a little bit harder to shift. Yeah.
Thing is I had a guy line these guys up in a straight line in like a hook around a building. It was like, and he had them exactly 2 inches apart in a straight line, and he moved them straight at my Wraith Knight.
Yeah, well,
I know that I fly, but he just kind of moved him at my Wraith Knight. I failed to charge my Wraith Knight on a different unit. He charged me, and he held me up for 4 turns. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I did that as well at Du Bois. Held up a Wraith Knight for, that was probably about 3 turns of combat, but the same thing. It's just like, okay, you can kill Termagants for 3 or 4 turns, and I won't worry about it.
Yeah, they're a good tar pit. That's the big thing going for them. They're cheap. They're 4 points a pop. If from what I've seen, and probably the way I deal with it, if I'm taking these, I'm not going super competitive. I'd take 30 and I'd take the Turbigon with it, but that would be the only unit I'd take. I'd spawn the rest as I go, and I've got one big fearless blob that I can either sit on an objective or I can use it to tar pit.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to justify shooting them too when you have flying hive tyrants in your face.
Exactly, that's a big thing too.
Yeah,
because they do take a while to whittle through. I mean, if they're sitting in cover, you've got your Malanthropes, your Venomthropes in there as well. A lot of small arms fire doesn't have access to ignores cover. They're tough to move.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we'll move on to Harmagants. Are they worth it, or yay or nay? They're basically the combat version of Termagants.
Nah, not really.
No.
Yeah, they're pretty terrible. They're fast, but they're running out of cover and they die. So we move on to a handy little choice called the Ripper Swarm. Are they yay or nay for troops?
They're if you're going straight from this book, they are the best troops choice.
Yeah, I'd say that. Yeah.
They're the cheapest, and they can get deep strike.
Mm-hmm.
It's only 2 points a base, and if you take 3 bases, 6 points, you deep strike.
Yeah.
So that's not too bad. So you're looking at 45 points for 3 dudes, and they're super tiny, so you can hide them really easily.
Exactly. Even the forge-rolled one is under an inch tall, and that's with all of them piled on top of each other.
And if you take a CAD, they get OPSEC, right?
Yes, they do.
So why don't people take 6 units of 3? Why do you never see that?
Because mucolids
That's
are
a
cheaper.
15-point unit, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess, but like these things, like I'm just thinking for P&P there, you could just take all the like you could win on secondary almost every time with these guys.
So they do have some problems still, right? They're toughness 3. They have a 6-up save. They don't get stealth shrouded anything. Their swarms are taking double wounds from a lot of stuff. You're instant deathing them with anything that's strength 6. They are easy to kill, but they are cheap and they can plop down on objectives when you need them to.
You get that objective, it doesn't matter if they die.
Their leadership 5 outside of Synapse, and their instinctive behavior feed, which means very likely they eat themselves. So if you don't have, you get to babysit them. That's the thing. And if you're moving Flyrants around, it's tougher to babysit them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but yeah,
Cool.
they're not terrible by any means.
So that's the end of troops. We'll move on to elites. The first one is the Hive Guard Brood. I like these guys, but then again, they basically shoot indirectly, 24-inch range, strength 8, AP4. I feel like they missed the boat. These guys should be, because they're only ballistic skill 3, I feel like they should be AP2.
Yeah.
Am I crazy?
No, I think that's fair. I mean, the strength 8 is really good. The AP2 is, or sorry, the AP4 is meh. there's
It's not
not
good at
that
all.
there's not that much. It's a high value target that is really going to be that good. That's only a 4-up save.
Yeah.
Yeah, a unit of these you might see sometimes. They're not bad. It's 55 points each, so if you take one or two, you've got some indirect shooting. They can sit behind a building on an objective or something and be a bit of a threat. The other big thing with the Impaler cannon is, I believe at least, it ignores cover. So you're popping transports. You're dealing with anything that can jink. They're not bad at taking out bikes, but again, it's low ballistic skill. You're not doing all that much every turn.
Well, you're getting one strength at 8 hit. If it was
Yeah.
AP3 even, you could literally be like, well, at least 3 of these guys kill 3 Eldar bikes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or 3 of these guys kill 3 Ravenwing bikes. It'd be kind of great. Or maybe even keep them the way they are, but give them 4 shots each. It just feels like they're for the current level of the game, they can't perform. But like you'd probably never take them. But it's like it's literally an objective grabber that shoots indirectly, which is awesome.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So now we bring to a pretty good elite choice. What's the next one?
So zoanthropes are the psychic monster of they're not a monster, but they're the psychic unit for Tyranids. They're the only thing in the book that gets a invul save. They get a 3-up. They're mastery level 2. They always know a power that's a shooting power, which is I think strength 10 AP1.
Lance too. Yep.
Lance, but 18-inch range, and then
AP2.
AP2 and 24-inch range. You can do a blast that is AP3 strength 6, I think. So, anti-space marine blast, but
Strength 5.
strength 5. There you go. Sorry, but they are
It's worse in every way than we're saying.
Yeah.
Jeez.
But it is. I mean, they're BS4, but because it's a psychic shooting power, it's warp charge 2. So you're sucking up all your warp charges to use it. Then you got to roll the hit, and then you got to not scatter if you're doing the anti-space marine one, or you got to penetrate if you're doing the lance. You got to be 18 inches away with a non-combat unit. That it's just like they have a fun plastic model, and they used to be cooler. And there's a chance of again with the Tyranid drop pod that comes in a later book, they're not terrible. You could drop some in and shoot stuff, but there's better. Like, why take them when they're moving 6 inches a turn when you can take a Hive Tyrant who is mastery level 2, isn't stuck with the bad psychic power, and flies.
Yep. That's sort of how this whole book's going to go if you're not getting the theme. But yeah, really cool model. It's come a long way from the old model.
Yeah.
Cool. So the next one, I guess we'll go back one, would be the Lictor Brood.
Oh, so
these guys are pretty decent.
yeah.
Caleb, you want to field those?
So lictors are the baby Death Leapers. They're basically like sort of a little monster. They got a 5-up save, strength 6, toughness 4. They deep strike without scatter. They also have infiltrate, so they can you can move them up. And they have some short range guns, flesh hooks, but basically they are these little guys that in the fluff they give off pheromones, and all the other Tyranids come after them and follow them up. So what it means is they operate like they have what is it called, the homing beacon thing or whatever in the Space Marine book that stops scatter for deep strike. So your other monstrous creatures, the deep strike, if you have a lictor on the board at the beginning of the turn, you can bring them up without scatter. Strength 6 means if they're being ignored, they can go in and kill some stuff, or they can try to take out some armor on tanks. But and they have rending claws, which means that their attacks get rending on 6s, I think.
Yep.
But I find that if you don't, when I write lists, I've written lists with them in it. There's one list, 4 Molochs and 4 Lictors and 4 Hive Tyrants. But if you're not careful, or if the Lictors are, the Lictors have to be on the board before the Moloch comes up, and there's a turn where, you can shoot at a 5-up save that has a cover save, but if you have anything that ignores cover, or you just have a decent enough volume of fire, my toughness 4 guy is just going to slowly melt.
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing. With Lictor's work and something we'll talk about a little bit later. It's one of the more one of the more infamous builds, which is Lictor Shame, which is similar to what Caleb was talking about.
Mhm.
But outside of that, you usually don't see them, which is a shame because it's a gorgeous kit.
Cool. So the next guy is the Venom Thrope. Yay or nay?
Oh yay! If we're
He's the
going
guy that
straight from
gives
this
cover
book,
save
yay.
bubble. Yeah, he's
Yep.
a yay in your opinion, Logan? Why is
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. So again, talking in just the internal balance of this book, the Venom Thrope's great. If we're talking about Nids as a whole, it's terrible. You'll take a Malanthrop every time.
Yeah, so we should take a break just because of the chat there for a minute. Yeah, we're basically the point of this is to go from our perspective is for people that are interested in understanding what the NIDs generally are and what they do to keep an eye out for them. We understand that there is one or two builds that work super effective and are all you'll really see at high level tournaments. But we just want to give like maybe a newer player like an overview of all the generic units, and then we'll get into formations and what to take in a competitive army at the end.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, sorry. Keep going.
So yeah, Venom Thropes. They're pretty fragile. They're toughness 4, 2 wounds, 5 up save. But the big thing with these guys, they have the Spore Cloud special rule. So it's everything. Every unit that has a model has at least one model within 6 inches of these guys gets shrouded, which is really good. Basically, unless the army you're up against ignores cover, it pretty much negates an alpha strike against them if you can get your guys in ruins, because you're sitting on 2+ cover saves at that point. It's really useful with large units like the 30 Termagants we were talking about earlier, something like that. If you give them shrouded, and they're in cover, that is now a 30 wound fearless unit where we lose Caleb again. 30 wound fearless unit that has a 2-up save. So it'll be pretty good. Now, again, we'll talk about the Malanthrop later, which is basically this on crack, but the Venom Thrope is no slouch.
Cool. So move on to the next one. The I can't even say it.
Haruspex.
Yeah.
So what's the Haruspex, Caleb?
It's a giant mouth creature that dies pretty quickly. I don't know. It looks cool, and I like the model, but that's about it.
What is it like? So I'm gonna say this wrong. Rapacious hunger. Is that what it has?
That's the rule it has.
Rapacious is the way you pronounce that, by the way.
Rapacious hunger. Rapacious. So that's its rule. So it just eats things and generates further attacks. Cool. So moving on. The Pyrovore. What is a Pyrovore? This is like an artillery piece, right?
It's an artillery piece that has a template weapon.
Yeah.
This is literally the worst thing that's ever been put in this game.
But doesn't it, like, it's slowly gotten slightly better every since they introduced it. It's still terrible because it was so bad at the beginning, but yeah.
Yeah, no, this thing is horrendous. It's 40 points for a strength toughness 4.
Yeah, toughness 4.
Infantry
Toughness 4.
with 3 wounds, and a 4+ save, and it has a flamer template that's like strength 5, AP 4 or something. It is garbage.
If it was 15 points or maybe 10, and you could take like a unit of 10,
yeah,
that would be kind of cool. No, it wouldn't, but it'd be cool, like in a drop pod or something, right?
Wow.
Yeah. These are like what was the Lizardmen unit?
Salamanders.
Salamanders. Yeah, they're like really really shitty salamanders. Yeah, these again, they're one of those cool models that are out there, but just you'll never see these. And to the unfortunate person that asked on Twitter how you would design your army if you had to take lots of pyrophores, just drink a lot of beer, man. Don't do it.
Yeah, it's like why did you buy them? It's probably like, oh well, you got them on sale for nickels or something like that. So would this be the worst unit in 40k? And his name was Predrag Vasiljevic. I'm sorry, dude. That's the best I can do. He asked that if you were forced at gunpoint to take an army of Pyrovores, how would you make it work?
Yeah.
Drop pods?
Yeah,
Drop
that's
pods
the
from
one
beer?
I do.
You could
Drop
put them in
pods,
pods, yeah.
And you could put a unit of 3 in a pod, and then you're getting 3 flame templates. That instinctive behavior will not shoot; they'll run at you and attack you instead. But if you make your leadership 6 check, then you might be able to shoot.
Yeah, so
Well, you fly in a Hive Tyrant, but he might have said nothing but you fly in the Hive Tyrants and make sure they're within range, synapse range. But then you're spending 120 points on 3 heavy flamers.
Yeah.
coming in through a pod, and how much are the pods?
It's like 100
Yeah,
points. Yeah.
yeah. So that's a
Oh,
really
man.
expensive Sisters
Yeah.
of Battle unit.
These things are so bad. Let's stop talking about them. They are not the worst thing though.
In
Not by
40, not in the. They might be
no.
the worst. Bottom 5 in 40K.
Bottom
Move.
bottom 5. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
So we should do that list one time. We'll move on to fast
Oh,
attack.
God.
The Tyranid Shrike Brood.
Yeah, so these things are basically flying Tyranid warriors. As far as I know, there's no GW model. There's a Forge World kit that will give them the wings.
Looks awesome too.
Yeah, they
Looks
look
really
sick.
awesome.
They look sick. The big thing with these guys is they can take biomorphs, so you can give them bone swords, which basically means you've got a unit of jump infantry with 5 attacks on the charge, weapon skill 5, initiative 4, and instant death attacks, which is nasty.
C'est beau, right?
Yep.
Is that how you say that?
Yeah, c'est bon, c'est bon. They are 30 points apiece before upgrades though.
Yeah.
But they are Synapse. They do have Shadows of the Warp. They've got their Devours, but again, only a 5-up save.
Yeah, exactly.
D4.
Because it's so important to your unit. They gave you a 5-up save so that you can take all that incoming fire on the way in.
When the regular warriors have a 4-up.
Yeah.
That's the part that blows my mind. Is like, why don't they just have the same bones as the other guys? Like, you're birthing them. Cool. So move on to the Ravener Brood. What do these do, Caleb?
So they are they are beasts, and they are basically little close combat. They're like mini Tyranid warriors, and they can deep strike and come in and try and attack stuff or shoot stuff up close, and usually they just die. I don't know. They're not that exciting, I don't think. I love the model, but and I've always wanted them to be cool, but they're a fast attack thing that costs 30 points per model that is just so much overpowered by everything else in the book.
Is that also bottom 5 in the book or game?
In the book, yes. In the game, no.
Yeah.
We've got a long way to go through this Tyranid book, Chris.
And they have a special character called the Red Terror, who would be really cool if he was good. Okay, so move on to the Sky Slasher Swarm Brood.
I have no idea what this is.
That's it. It's weirdly placed in the book, but it's a what you call it? It's the Flying Rippers, right? That's the
That's right. Yeah. I've never in my life actually seen these.
I kind of like them, to tell you the truth.
So it's a Flying Ripper Swarm.
Yeah.
Jump infantry swarms. Okay, that's actually kind of cool.
Yeah, they get deep strike automatically, and they're not that many more points.
Yeah, so what? It's 9 points to give your Ripper Swarms jump, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
That's pretty cool. I'm on board with that.
The model is nice from GW or from Forge World.
It's Forge World. Okay, that would be why I haven't seen it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's legit. Okay, I can see that.
You should get one. You should do these guys to get one base, put one Ripper on it with like
With the wings,
with like the wings, like huge wings, and be like, "This is my Sky Slashers." But you would want them really small if you could make them and hide them, right? So,
I like it.
like you take like 6 units of these. If you can take 2 CADs or something, that's a ton of fast scoring units for ITC. It's not OBSEC, but it's a lot of fast scoring units.
that eat themselves. Toughness 3 with a 6-up save.
Yeah, and Leadership 5. Yeah.
But the thing is you would hopefully have them within range of some kind of Flyrant, and then jump them away on objectives, score your objectives, and then they would die.
Yeah, and I guess to be fair, the turn they come in from Deep Strike, they don't have to test. So they'll score that one turn, then they're going to die anyway.
Yeah.
So next one. So I guess we'll move on to the Gargoyle Brood.
Yeah, so gargoyles are pretty cool. They're basically flying termagants. Well, they're jump infantry. They've got flesh borers. They have blinding venoms. I think if you take a wound, you have to take a blind test, which is pretty good. You can get up to 20. You can get up to 30 gargoyles in a unit. They are 6 points apiece, which is not bad. Usually, if you're going to see these guys, they're going to be part of the Skyblight formation, where if they die, they keep coming back on a 4+.
Oh, that's so good.
Or they're going to be paired with a Harridan, which is one of the Lords of War we'll talk about, which is insanely good, actually.
And when I say so good, I mean within the context of the Nid army.
Yeah.
There's one other formation you can do, which is the Flying Hive Tyrant with 30 gargoyles, I think, and then they become a unit. So you have, but they can't. So he can't swoop, so he has to sort of be jumping, but he's got 30 ablative wounds around him. So if it's an interesting, different way to try him, but not something I've ever really wanted to try out.
Okay, so moving along, we have the Harpy. What's this guy do? Or what is he?
So it's one of the 2 flying monstrous creatures that you can build from the kit. This is the one that that does. I guess they're both sort of anti-infantry shooters, is what I'd say. With the Harpy being more of a shooter, it's not bad. It's good. There's the one formation you just said, the Skyblight Swarm, where you take 2 of these. 1 Hive Crone, which we'll talk about next, and a bunch of gargoyles, and the gargoyles get OBSEC. And these guys are flying in and shooting stuff. They're good. They always have, unless you take the bad gun, they're basically always shooting templates, so you're not really shooting other flyers with them. But otherwise, I guess they're not bad for a flying thing that can shoot some infantry.
Yeah, they're 135 points, and the other thing to keep in mind, of course, is they're flying monstrous creatures. So that torrent, I think it might be torrent actually. But either way, the template's 360 degrees around them, so you can vector strike and then shit on something.
It's not torrent, but you can 360. Yeah.
Yep.
But then you can't touch things with your wings like you can with a.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yep. So these things are only 135 points, though. So they are not a bad flying monstrous creature for that many points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they have the ones too that do the anti-tank shots, right?
Yeah, they've got Haywire that you can upgrade.
Yeah. Cool. But of course, like everything Tyranid, they get the crappier save than the other monstrous creatures, and they get bumped down in toughness.
Yeah, 4+ T5.
They gotta have weak bones so they can float.
So how's the Hive Crone compare to him?
So the Hive Crone is the one with the template weapon. Actually, I think the Drool Cannon.
Yeah, it's the one with the Drool Cannon.
Yeah, we got these backwards. So the Harpy is the one with the guns, the Stranglethorn cannons.
I was wondering what you guys were talking about. I was like, no, that doesn't seem right.
The Hive Crone has the flamer. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
but it's still the same thing. They're all attacking they're attacking everything on the ground, right? That's the thing. Both of them are.
So the 2 flying monstrous creatures, right? Oh, sorry. Keep going.
Well, I was gonna say the one thing the Hive Crone has is Raking Strike, which means that if she does a vector strike, it's at strength 7 instead of strength 5.
Strength 8.
Oh, strength 8. There we go. Sorry.
I'm just kidding.
That's actually pretty good.
That's really good.
Especially with the Tentaquids, too. So this guy can take out, or this lady can take out flyers pretty easily between the strength 8 vector strike and the Tentaquids, and can take out ground targets pretty easily with the Drool Cannon.
Yeah, I've played against a Hive Crone, or I think it was 2 of them. And as long as you hit, you'll do something, right?
Yeah.
They are BS3. Fortunately, one of them is a template.
But if you're shooting your Tentaclids against flyers, you got Twin Linked on them at least. So.
No, it's not bad then.
It's not terrible.
Yeah.
So the next one would be the Spore Mine Clusters. These are basically disposable units that are pretty common. You see a lot of them. They deep strike, fearless, floating death, living bomb. So when they come in and they get within
1 inch.
1 inch of an enemy unit, which could be through the assault phase, correct? Then they explode and they do damage to it.
Yep.
It's only through the assault phase now. Like you have to charge people, but you also are charging and running at half speed.
So I want to show something really cool here. So if you're in the chat and you actually paid for I don't know if it'll work. If you actually paid for the iPad version of this and you click on the picture under Spore Mines, watch this really carefully. It comes up with a pink replace me, which is probably from when they coded the book. They wanted to replace the picture there. And it really scared me. I thought like Yoshi was on my iPad.
That's great.
Somebody made a mistake from GW in that one. I just thought that was neat to point out. So for those listening at home, if you click on that picture, a big pink replace me sign comes up and then it flashes to a picture.
In Comic Sans font, no less.
Yeah.
Like that's Yoshi working for GW right there.
So is there anything else to add about the Spore Mines? Like you would always take these, right? They're good. They don't score at all, but they come in.
You'll never take them.
Really?
No, you'll never take them. All your points are going to Hive Tyrants and Mawaks. You'll never take Spore Mines. The only exception is if you're taking the formation that has all the mycetic spores and spore assists.
Because I've played against these a lot.
Yeah, they're
so one of the reasons you might have is that what we forgot to say is the Harpies drop spore mines. One of their guns is like a spore mine gun, and if it misses, it drops spore mines. They're also like the alternate model of the drop pod shoots spore mines, as do biovores. Don't they exist anymore?
Yeah,
in the book?
Biovores shoot spore mines as well if they miss.
And so you might have played, like, there's a lot of things that produce spore mines. They're just, they're not worth taking unless you're doing like Highlander or something like that.
Yeah, because keep in mind they're 1 wound with toughness 1 and no save. Like if you breathe on these, they fall over dead.
Yeah, I'm not saying I've ever played a really high-end NID player, but I've seen them a lot.
No, you will not see these pretty much ever with any well-designed NID list.
Cool. So we go on to heavy support. This unit is one of my favorites in this book, and everybody's gonna say, "Okay, this is stupid," but Carnifex broods are awesome.
They are
fantastic. I don't care who you are. I played against them. The guy beat the crap out of my Chaos Space Marines. I think it was a tie, but I like to give these guys because they're toughness 6, strength 9 in combat, so they can like destroy Wraith Knights and things like that. You can give them 2 of the Devourers, twin linked, so they get tons of shots. You put 3 of them in a not a squadron, 3 of them in a unit. You can basically blast away a ton of stuff. You give them regen, and then you can kind of play this game where you put one forward, he takes a couple wounds, and you move him back to regen, and you put another one forward, and he takes wounds, and you keep cycling them through. And they're actually really hard to deal with because they're toughness 6, 3+ save with that regen, and they dish out a ton of firepower at 18-inch range. Yeah. So I like them. I don't know. I'm probably crazy, but I like them.
No. Three DAC effects is scary. It's a ton of shooting. It's the same. Like they can take the same upgrade the Hive Tyrants can, right? You get I think it still works out to 12 shots a guy.
Yeah.
So it's 12 shots at strength 6, twin linked.
Ballistic skill 4 though, so it's like you're only hitting 9 times. Sorry, ballistic skill 3. You're only hitting 9 times though.
9 times instead of 11, but it's 140 points or something with the upgrades. And 3 of those that take a long time to burn through with the T6 and 4 wounds, and as Chris said, you can shuffle them around.
You take 3 solos would be nice too.
You can take 3 solos as well, but then you're not
taking
why you don't do that. Things. But, a unit of DAC effects is not a bad choice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you wouldn't take combat ones; they're just too slow.
No, too slow. They won't get there. And these guys, if you even take the loadout with the guns, right, they're still strength 9 with 3 attacks each.
And they're kind of expensive for what they do. Like I understand why you don't see them super commonly, but in like an event where it's like single CAD, no allies, no formations, these guys plus 2 of the flying Hive Tyrants give you enough shooting to kind of make up for it. Cool. So we'll move on to, as Caleb mentioned earlier, the Biovores. This is your Spore Mine Artillery piece, so take it away.
Yeah, I don't know why you would take it unless you have the model still and you really want to play with everything in your thing. It shoots spore mines, and
they're terrible. Those 2 models, the Pyrovore and the Biovore, are like garbage. They're like just no reason to take them. They're just garbage at 40 points, and I think the model's very expensive too.
It's an old metal one, right? Or it's
it's the same model since they redid them in the 3.5 codex.
Oh, terrible.
Yeah. But so the one way you can run these is in living artillery because you get twin linked barrage with them, and you have to take them. But otherwise,
is the Trigon any good?
Trigon's so the Trigon not so much. The Trigon Prime though, which is the better version of the Trigon, yes.
Yeah.
So we're gonna skip that over. So the Trigon's the little version. He's kind of crappy. Trigon Prime. What does he do? How is he good?
So this guy is a big stompy monstrous creature. It's the same kit as the Mawok, I think. But effectively, it's a giant monstrous creature with 5 attacks, strength 6, toughness 6 wounds on a monstrous creature with a 3+ save. He's got a bioelectric pulse shooting attack, which is I can't remember the exact stats on it, but it's basically like a heavy bolter or something. 2 pairs of sighting talons. He has subterranean assault, so he's deep striking. He can use the pheromone trails from the lictors to come in. He gives you synapse. It's pretty solid. The only downside to this guy, of course, is he's 230 points.
That's a lot, yeah.
He's if you by the way, bioelectric pulse is strength 5, AP 5, assault 12. So he does put out a decent amount of firepower.
Yeah, and to note, the Trigon is not necessarily worse than this guy. The stat lines are very, very similar. The big difference is that the Prime can take better or more different upgrades, so you can kit them out a bit differently. If you're going for pure points efficiency, though, the Trigon is probably the better choice.
Do you take either of them, though?
No, because you go to the next thing.
Yeah,
on
you
it.
go to
Okay,
the
so
next
let's
page
move
of
on to the
Codex.
next one. Moloch, yeah.
Caleb?
So the Moloch is Tremors, right? It's the
Graboids.
it's the monstrous creature that tunnels around. So it starts off the board. Well, you can start it on the board, but it can deep strike, and it can purposely deep strike onto models, and they take everything. So you put the template down, the large template, and you everything under the template after you scatter takes a strength 6 AP2 hit. If you can fit the model on the board, then you put it back on the board or where the template is. If you can't, everything takes a strength 6 AP2 hit again, and then you see if you can do it. If you can, he goes on the board. If not, he goes into you roll for a mishap, and you hope that he goes into ongoing reserves. He's a monster, strength 6, toughness 6, 6 wounds, 3+ save. And he has hit and run, so if he is in combat with anything, you can get him out on your turn. And the fun thing is he can go back into ongoing reserves at the start of your turn by burrowing back underground and then come and hit stuff again.
Yeah, and that's one of the big things with this guy is if when you bring him in, don't be afraid of the mishap, right? Because it's only on a 1 that something necessarily bad happens. If your opponent, if you roll the thing where he goes into ongoing reserves, perfect, it's what you wanted. If it's one where your opponent places him, either place him somewhere where your Moloch can possibly get a charge if it doesn't die, or if it's back in like the back corner of the table, great, I'm just going to put him back into ongoing reserves, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, these things are nasty. They're 140 points, too.
I see it as like an artillery piece that shoots 2 shells a turn, and then...
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then like, oh, well, if I get to do it a second time, that's a bonus. And if I get to charge shit, that's even a better bonus.
Yeah, and much like the Trigons, these guys can use the pheromone trails as well, which is one of the key things for using lictors effectively. Now, the one thing... I had something to say, but it's popped out of my head.
So the one other thing with them is they have instinctive behavior. They're not synapse, but the wording of the instinctive behavior, it's at the beginning of the wording of their ability to burrow isn't interfered with by the instinctive behavior. Like even if they fail their instinctive behavior test and you're going to go try to eat stuff, you can just choose to burrow, and then you don't have to go try to eat stuff if you don't want to.
That's handy.
Exactly. Yeah, but these guys are really good. You'll very often see 3 of them or more. Now, the one thing to keep in mind if you're playing against these guys is that their attack can only hit you on the ground level of something. So if you put your dudes in the first or second level of some ruins or on top of a building, they can't actually be hit.
That's pretty good advice, yep. So, in the sake of time, we're going to move on. We have the Exocrine, and he's not good at all, right? How do you say that?
Exocrine, yeah.
Yeah. It's the other one of the big mouth guy. He's a big shooting guy, but it's like a 12-inch range or something like that. It's,
24, strength 7, AP2, blast.
Yeah, it's basically a plasma cannon.
Yeah.
Yeah, these guys, again, are only good in living artillery, because otherwise they're just a blast weapon. But when you get twin linked on them and whatever else living artillery gives you, they become reasonable.
I actually like the Tyran effects, but they're pretty garbage. It's Assault 4, Strength 5, AP4, 18-inch range, Stinger Salvo.
Mm-hmm.
But they're basically just Tyranid artillery pieces that just aren't really that effective. They're supposed to shoot, but they don't have good range. They don't really do much well, I guess you could say.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
Cool. So I guess with that, we're going to go on to the... I guess we'll start with the formations, right? So there are no formations in the actual Codex books itself, right?
Right.
No.
So the first one's is they have 3 formations and attachments. So what are those?
So, they've actually got a lot more than that. There are a few key ones, which I think are the main ones we'll talk about. Otherwise, we'll be here all day. The big things for the NIDs are the High Fleet Leviathan detachment, which allows you to take 3 HQ choices.
Yep.
3 flying hive tyrants. And other than that, it's pretty much a normal CAD minus fortification. And then for the formations, the big ones that you'll maybe see but probably won't our living artillery, which we talked about, which is an Exocrine, 3 Biovores, and a Tyranid warrior brood. But all of the ranged weapons get pinning, and they can reroll their scatter or reroll their scatter for blast or barrage if the target's within 12 inches of the warriors.
Yep.
That doesn't sound good at all.
It's the only way to make these things effective. Realistically, it's just a hell of a lot of barrage. But yeah, you won't see it too often. The other big one is Skyblight, which is basically flying monstrous creature spam. It's a Hive Tyrant that has to take wings. Oh no. A Hive Crone, 2 Harpies, and 3 Gargoyle units. The Gargoyles all get objective secured, which is pretty great on its own. All the flying monstrous creatures are pretty solid. And when the Gargoyle broods get completely destroyed, on a 4+, they go into ongoing reserves at full strength.
I like that. I really like that.
Yeah. So it's actually pretty solid.
If you want to go crazy, like how many, you can take 30 Gargoyles in a brood, and so you've got 90 Gargoyles coming down with Deep Strike that have OBSEC, and will come back on a 4+ if somebody actually manages to kill 30 of them.
Yep.
Well, they will kill 30 of them, so let's face it.
So yeah, this thing's not bad. It's not super, it's not optimal by any means, but it's pretty good.
So what you're saying is you generally would run a CAD and then the one formation.
You take a CAD and Leviathan detachment.
And Leviathan, and then you get 5 flying Hive Tyrants.
Yep.
And the one unit we skipped over, because there were new units added in the Leviathan book too, the one that matters is the Bucalid Spore.
Yes.
Well, yeah, so we're going to get into that. So in the supplements, there's 5 new units, right?
Mm-hmm.
First one's the talk screen. What's the talk screen?
I have one on the shelf behind me. I own 2 of them. It's an awesome looking model that does nothing. It's a monstrous creature that has poison 2+. It's a close combat thing, but it has a 4+ save, so you get shot before you get there.
And then the Maliceptor.
Literally the worst model in 40k.
Yeah.
Is that the worst? Like, that's hands down the worst?
This guy has an instant death attack that more often than not is going to kill him.
Okay, so how? Like, if he's the worst model in 40k, I want to know what the hell he does.
All right. Caleb, you have the rules handy?
Yeah, so he has... he's a monstrous creature. He's got Scything Talents. He's a Psyker Mastery level 2 with a 5+ invul. He, like the Zoanthropes, always knows a specific power. It's called Psychic Overload. Warp Charge 2. It's a focused Witchfire with a range of 24 inches. You take a 3d6 leadership test, and you fail. If you fail, you suffer d3 wounds. You can try the power 3 times in the psychic phase. If you have, somehow you're going to get 6 warp charges off. And that's the main thing. And where's the one where he's killing himself? I'm not seeing.
Sorry, I have that backwards. It's actually the Toxicrine that does the killing itself.
He's got the shooting blast with the...
the shooting blast with instant death.
So the Toxicrine's the worst.
Well, they're both bad. The Maliceptor is just utterly useless, and the Toxicrine has a good chance of killing itself.
Yeah.
You will not use either of these. The only time I've actually ever seen either of them was right after they came out or at Highlander events.
Yeah.
So what about the Tyrannocyte?
Yeah, so this thing is pretty cool. It's a very expensive drop pod, basically. It's got, I think, 5 Barbed Stranglers, or you can change it out for Venom Cannons. It's Ballistic Skill 2, which is kind of balls, but it's got a transport capacity of, I think, 30. Or a monstrous creature. So you can drop in attack effects with this thing. You could drop in a Trigon Prime. It's not an assault vehicle, though.
I thought that was a bit lame that it's 1 monstrous creature or 30 other guys. I found that a little bit... should it be like, why can't I put 3 Carnifexes in it? Yeah. Now, one thing, when these first came out, people were putting them inside themselves.
Yes, so there's nothing technically rules is written that prevents you from doing that, because this thing is not a vehicle. It is a monstrous creature, and it can transport a monstrous creature. So you can have Russian dolls of Tyrannocytes if you want, and just, I don't know why you would ever want to, but you could.
It's
they do damage. They do damage when they come in. They shoot a lot.
And because they're monstrous creatures, they have 5, their 5 guns are supposed to, if you were a drop pod or something, you'd be looking at what each gun can see, because they have rules about they have to shoot the closest thing. But they're monstrous creatures, so they have 360 line of sight from their non-existent eyes. and so they just shoot five death spitters at the closest thing. Or if you're me and you take them with venom cannons to fill in some points, they shoot 5 templates at things and then scatter back on themselves and do wounds on themselves with their ballistic skill too.
That's
Yeah.
horrible.
So one thing to keep in mind if you're using these, check what FAQ your event's using. A lot of them will FAQ them based on that line of sight thing that Caleb just mentioned. For whether you measure from each gun individually for which it shoots at, which is a bit closer to how the rules are written for it, or if it's just overall the unit that's closest to the model, and everything shoots at that. So double check on how it's being ruled. Ask your TO if it's not clear. But yeah, it's usually not too much of an issue.
And then the sporocyst,
Sporocyst, yeah.
Wow.
It's an infiltrator that shoots spore mines at whatever's closest. Plus, it has the regular gun, so it shoots
You played one of these against me, didn't you?
Yeah, it was kind of terrible. I mean, they're kind of interesting because they're 75 points and they get somebody's attention early on while the rest of your stuff is slowly walking towards him, but it doesn't do much else. It just kind of sits in one place.
And then the mucoloids.
Mucolid, the best troops choice for Tyranids.
Yeah.
These are 15 points for a spore. They are 3 wounds with toughness 3. They have shrouded. They can assault flyers, which is really cool. But basically they're a spore mine, I think, otherwise. But they're a troops choice. So you take 2 of these instead of taking 90 points of troops choices for your 2 units of rippers. You've taken 30 points, and you've got things that are more durable than your
That's really awesome, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I think that's it. So they count as your troops choice, but if I remember correctly, these things can never score.
Yeah, they can't score.
They can never score, but you never get points for killing them either.
That's right. They can't give up first blood.
And
they don't give up kill points.
And they're strength 8 AP 3 when they blow up, as opposed to the strength 4 AP 4. And I think they get the same thing. You can add up to 2, and for every one you add, like spores, you add a strength to your blast when they blow up. So you can go up to strength 10 AP3, I guess, if you wanted.
Why would you, though, instead of just taking 3 separate ones?
So that you can instant death that unit of Tyranid warriors that somebody brought.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. Well, you do it anyway, don't
you?
You
do it anyway, because we're only T4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah,
so they have 3.
good.
Yeah, they're fantastic. We have Forge World units. We have 3 of them. They're 3 of them. The super heavies are the Barb/Scythed Herodule.
Hierodule, right?
Yeah. So these things are pretty cool. The caveat with these is they are very overpriced in terms of points. They're, I think, 535 and 565 points. The Barb is the 565 one. The Barbed Hierodule is the shooty one, but it's actually the worst of the 2 at shooting. It's ballistic skill 3, so they're both strength 10, toughness 8, pretty respectable, 6 wounds, and again a 3-up save. They are gargantuan creatures though, so you get stomp. The Barbed Hierodule has 2 biocannons, strength 10, AP 3, assault 6, and scything talons, which is pretty good. The Scythed Hierodule, on the other hand, has a Hellstorm, strength 6, AP 3 flamer, which is pretty solid, and is also strength 10, toughness 8, 6 wounds, 3+. And has scything talons. So both pretty good. The Scythe Hierodule, I think, is probably the better of the 2. The strength 10 shooting is nice. It's decent at popping vehicles. You're getting 5 hits with it. It can do some damage. But the Scythe Hierodule is just removing your marine equivalents from the game at alarming rates with Hellstorm templates.
And that one can go you can put that in a Sporocyst? Or, I mean, a Tyrannocyte? No.
No. They're gargantuan creatures.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah. Now the one thing against these guys is, since they are gargantuan creatures, and GW never updated their FAQ on this, if you make them move through cover, they're going 6 inches at the most.
Oh.
Just put a small hill, not a hill, but like a fence post in front of them, and you cripple their movement.
That sucks. So what's the Herodin?
Yeah, so the Herodin is the flying one. So the Herodin is basically a giant gargoyle that transports gargoyles. It's strength 10, toughness 8, 8 wounds with a 3+ save, 735 points. Again, has 2 bio cannons, so the Strength 10 AP3 Assault 6 weapons. It's an open-topped transport that can carry 20 gargoyles as a single unit, and those don't come with the points. I don't think. I'll need to double check. They might. But if the Harridan is slain, then all the gargoyles have to take an initiative test or they're removed from the game.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the Bio Titan. Sorry.
Yeah, they're pretty solid. The Bio Titan is an interesting thing. So it's 1,000 points. It has a 2+ save and a 6+ invulnerable save. Ooh. It also has regeneration, which is a 4+. You get a wound back.
A Sisters of Battle model there.
Yeah. So again, gargantuan creature, weapon skill 6, strength 10, toughness 9.
Wow. 10
wounds, 8 attacks. Like this is like the old school giant creature, right? Has toxic miasma, so you can release it. This is the same thing the Toxicrene has. Initiative 1 stab, you take number of hits equal to number of guys who are in base, strength 3 AP dash, poison ignores cover. It's got 2 bio cannons, again the strength 10 AP3, has lash whips and scything talons. So it's pretty baller.
But 1,000 points. So like if I want to do a Tyranid army, I could just take one of these, 2 flying hive tyrants, and 2 of those 15-point.
And you would lose to a single game to the Centurions.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's the only downside of this thing. It can eat so much more conventional firepower. So like las cannons are never taking this thing down. Buddy of mine and I tried this, and it took 13 turns of endlessly regenerating all of my heavy support choices from the Chaos Codex to kill it.
Wow.
It does not go down fast, but Grav just utterly destroys it immediately.
Sweet. So we have 2 units left. We have the Dimitrion?
Macaron? That's a
Dimicaron? Yeah, it's a good question. Caleb, you want to run with this guy? He's pretty cool.
I have played against it. It's a giant fighting monster. It's giant monster's creature, but he comes up and he attacks, and he's overpriced for a giant fighting monster, but he's not terrible. He's like a big he's a super hive tyrant, except he doesn't have synapse and doesn't have psychic powers.
Yeah, so I've got the rules here. Actually, I can run through it for you. He's weapon skill 8, I think. Having a hard time reading it. Strength 6, toughness 6, I think 6 wounds, initiative 6, 5 attacks. Again, a 3+ save with leadership 10. Movement, he can only move 6 inches. He is just a monstrous creature. Assault phase, when he does assault, he gets Hammer of Wrath at +1 strength and with strike down, which is pretty cool. He's got Grasping Talons, which are +1 strength AP2 in close combat, and on a single 6 to hit roll, he gets to use something called Thorax Spine Maw, which is effectively an instant death attack against something. It's strength +4, so strength 10, AP1, instant death, digestion spine, and basically digestion spine. If you kill something with this, you get a number of counters equal to the number of wounds it had, and you can discard one of those counters to get, or I think you have to, discard one of the counters, and you get 4+ feel no pain. So he gets a bit more durable. Now, one of the other things he has here is another close combat weapon. I think this may have just been, I'm not sure if it's an oversight. It's not super clear. I'm assuming you choose which one of these you want to use like you normally do. But he has another set of weapons called Sickle Claws, which are just strength user AP2. But they have a special rule called Sickle Strike. On a roll of 4+, an attack inflicted by this has instant death. So, at the expense of losing your possible feel no pain, eating a whole model kind of thing, you can get a ton of instant death attacks with this. It is 200 points, but
that seems steep, yeah. Right.
Yeah, I'd almost argue that it's worth it sometimes, depending on what your list is. If you are taking a really good tournament heavy list, you probably won't see this. In a lot of other scenarios, you might. It's a cool model. It's pointed, I think, a little leniently in line with some of the other Tyranid stuff, but the model is just gorgeous.
Really? Because it's one of my least favorite of the Forge World models.
I love this guy.
We talked about this, Caleb. You only like models that are crap in game.
that is entirely true.
You do own 2 Toxicrenes.
Yeah. It is a problem. I will admit that.
Like, what's your favorite model ever? Like, it's a Sister of Battle, isn't it?
Probably Celestin. Yeah.
So
She's
the
a
last, oh,
She's the
sorry.
least bad of that book.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. See,
So the next one is the Melanthrope. He's the last unit we have to cover.
Yeah, this thing is awesome. The Malanthrope, where did he go here? Malanthrope, 85 points. So a little steep for what you think is just a Venomthrope, but 4 wound Venomthrope with toughness 5, leadership 10, synapse, again shrouded with the spore cloud. So basically a super good, far more durable guy compared to the Venomthrope. Gets regeneration, which is great. Gets toxic miasma, which is what it is, but has some really awesome rules. So if this guy gets charged at the beginning of the fight subphase, Malthorpe can issue a challenge. If that challenge is accepted on a 4+, the person who accepted the challenge has half as many attacks rounded down and only initiative 1.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, and this thing has poison 2+, which is pretty great.
So he basically replaces the other guy, no questions asked, get rid of the Venomthrope.
You take this instead of the Venomthrope.
Yeah.
He also has an ability. If the Malanthrope brood is involved in close combat, which results in enemy unit or units being destroyed. It cannot do sweeping advance, but basically it eats the corpses, is the idea from it. From the end of that phase onwards, all Tyranid units get preferred enemy against all units from the same codex as the thing that died.
That's pretty good.
and I would say that is my favorite of the Forge World Tyranid models. That is
It
an
is a
awesome
really cool model. A really cool model.
Cool. So that's the end of the book and all the formations for the most part, and all the Forge World units and all that stuff. What's sorry?
There's a Forge World Spore that nobody ever uses.
The testicle, the flying testicle.
They use the model as a mucilid, but yeah.
Cool. So that's it. So
We'll talk about that one.
What's the optimal way to run the NID book? Like, sorry, what tier is the NID book in? Is it top tier, middle tier, low tier?
Oh, high-low.
High-low?
Yeah, like it's the best of the worst. It's better than Sisters. It's better than it's better than Chaos, Space Marines, but it's probably below everything else.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about pure Chaos Space Marines.
Pure Chaos Space Marines. Yeah, not
yeah.
even good.
And then, so what's the best way to run it, Caleb?
Flying Hive Tyrants and Molochs.
Would you say like a 5 and 3 split? 5 Tyrants, 3 Molochs?
You could do, I think, 5 and 4 in 1850, but the other way you could do it is you could add lictors to try and get the pheromone trail to make sure, because the problem with the Molochs is occasionally, if you scatter 8 inches or 9 inches or 12 inches like I tend to, then you're not really getting the help from your shots. So adding in a couple lictors helps to make sure your Molochs, you're getting the most from the Molochs. So I have a list that I'm building that's 4, 4, and 4. 4 Hive Tyrants, 4 lictors, 4 Molochs. Problem is when you're doing monsters creatures, you can't finesse the points as much, but 5 and 4, 4, 4, 4. I like those numbers.
Cool. And it sounds kind of lame, but that's basically the only way to run it competitively. You could try doing the DAC effects if you're limited to 1 CAD, something like that. Try a Melanthrope if you need to, but there's no other way to run it than that and actually get results.
Except you could be a troll. There's the one formation that we didn't talk about. That's the spore field. That's literally just the different types of spore mines. And so if you're at some tournament where it's unlimited formations or you get some special dispensation, just take all of those, and your opponent will never get points for killing your units, and you'll just be blowing stuff up and never doing anything. You'll
lose all your games, though. Yeah, you'll lose.
You'll never take objectives. You'll slowly go across the field and troll your opponents.
So I played against that at Du Bois in the doubles. It was 4 Flyrants and the Spore thing and the Lictor formation. The brutal thing with that Spore formation is when the big spores die, it creates more small spores, and when the small spores die, they come back.
Oh,
yeah!
It's so incredibly frustrating. It sucks. It's terribly bad, but it's incredibly obnoxious to play against.
Yeah, it's trolling people on an in-person level, but
it really is.
Which is called getting punched in public.
Yeah, but otherwise, Hive Tyrants and Wallachs. I mean, the best explanation I ever heard of it is some guy, I don't remember where I was writing, and said, look, you have to think of the Tyranids as like they're the ultimate bad guy, impersonal alien force, and kind of the same way that orcs are. Their rules kind of set them up to be, guess who can kill them pretty easily? Oh, all the fun good guy forces like Tau and Space Marines and everything else. And so you have, you can forge the narrative of these poor beleaguered Space Marines that heroically kill all these giant monsters walking towards them, but it's because the giant monsters have terrible rules, and so it's a lot easier for them to do it.
Yeah, and that is the thing that sort of lines up the Codex with the fluff. Is the Tyranids are not exactly competent fighters by any means. They are the endless swarm. So in fluff terms, you're going to have a legion or something fighting and defending a planet here, but they're not going to be fighting against 5 flying hive tyrants and 3 Molochs. They're going to be fighting off 5 million flying hive tyrants and 10 million Molochs and all this other shit that's getting thrown at them. So sadly, the Codex does not have good internal or external balance. But it's got a few things that shine in it. But sadly, it's tough to make work because, of course, flying monsters creatures, they're not scoring if they're flying around. If they're gliding, they are just bolter bait basically. And if you make these things jink, they're not that useful anymore. So it's tough to play. It can be good though. So there are 2 people in ITC rankings who have done very well with these. There's Jeff and Control Robinson, who I think is still first place on Tyranids and hasn't played them in a while, but a very high-ranked ITC player. The guy that won LVO last year was running he didn't win. He got second, I think, at LVO last year. Was running Tyranids with the Lictor Shame list that we talked about with the Lictor, like 5-6 Lictors and all the Molochs and Hive Tyrants and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then I want to say that Jim Yee from Zero Comp is running them. I think he switches between Nids and Grey Knights, I think. And he's in the fight to be the top rank for both of those armies.
Well, let's face it, 5 Flyrants is terrifying against even MSU Eldar. It's really hard to kill, especially if they go second and they reserve them. They come in, they're flying, and they just gut you, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But cool, maybe a reason to take Skyfire and something. If you think, because anything with Skyfire, you're just like, I have to stay out of your range, and then I'm really ineffective because I have 18-inch guns, which are probably shorter than your range, or I have to swarm you with 5 tyrants and hope that I can take you down before you can take me down.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So I guess that's it for the Tyranids. I guess we'll go to the question and answer at the end of the show. So if you're in the chat and you have any questions, we'll be quick about this though because we are over time. So one of the first things that came up is they did not like that Logan's Chaos Space Marines are ranked lower than Tyranids. They feel that Chaos Space Marines are ranked higher than Tyranids. We said that Nids are the bottom, but I said Orcs are, and then somebody said Orcs are amazing, you're nuts. So that's kind of how the chat kind of went. So is there any questions, guys, for us?
So for the record, that was Chris talking to himself in the chat saying that. But yeah, no, I don't think there were too many other questions. I think we covered most of what came up through it. The one thing that is very pressing here is we did not cover this. This is from Socks of Death. Are you guys going to talk about how every Nid weapon sounds like a dick joke? The answer is no, we're not, but you are not wrong at all. It's very true.
I have a name. Who is Socks of Death?
That's Kieran.
Oh, damn it, Kieran.
Yeah. So I think the big takeaway from this, because one of your questions earlier on, is really with these guys that they're a tough army to play. There's one really good setup, one that can work but doesn't really. Mm-hmm. If you're playing this, you're playing Flying Hive Tyrants. So if you're looking to get into 40k and you want to play it competitively, look elsewhere unless you're really attached to Nids. Though fortunately, the Flying Hive Tyrants are really cool looking models. So are the Molochs. So at least you're going to have a really gorgeous army if you decide.
I don't know. I think it's good in an ETC style event. If you're running an 8-man team, I think that list definitely has a place.
Yep.
I almost want to say it's a good Eldar counter. Like,
I guess so. The thing,
Yeah.
Because I play Eldar and I'm terrified of the 5 Flyrant list. Like, terrified of it.
add a unit of Dark Reapers, and then you take out everything in the because it's the what is it, AP3 no jink, and it just shoots Skyfire. So
Well, it's only strength 5, and it's not Skyfire. You hit on 6s, but it's twin linked.
yeah, but still, it's just like it's the problem of Nids is that the fluff is they're endless swarms, and the reality is that if you're playing the top stuff, you've got if you take 5 Hive Tyrants, you got 20 wounds with AP with 3+ armor. Toughness 6 isn't bad, but it's still like I just got to get 26s over the course of the game, and lots of people can do that, or at least against me, apparently.
So somebody says Kieran seems to think you can get 8 Flyrants in a list. Is that possible?
You could do
3 detachments. Yeah, you
double CAD and
double CAD Leviathan.
Well, can you do double Leviathan for 6? For 8?
You could. I mean, if the comp allows it. If you play uncomped, yeah, you definitely could. Because they're 230 points each when you get them out.
Yeah, but you could take that in ITC, right? You could take 8 in ITC. Because double Leviathan.
You could. I think he was talking about Dark Reapers for that. I think points-wise, you cap out at 7 of the Flyrants because you have to take your troops' choices.
Oh, okay. He says 6 or 7. Okay,
yeah.
I would take 6. Personally, I would just take Flyrants and Spore Mines and see how it goes.
Now, do you guys, maybe I was cut out for that part, but electroshock grubs, did you talk about that?
Yeah, so it's haywire shots basically that these guys get. So they do have an answer to high armor.
And that's the one that I would tend to take with the Flyrants, which puts them at 240 instead of 230, but it just means that, like, you could do something with armor, you could do something with knights, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But you can punch through knights pretty easily anyway with your 360-degree arcs. They're 12 on the sides and back, so...
Yeah.
You're glancing on 6s, they get a save, but when you've got 5 Flyrants, you're going to punch through pretty fast.
Yep.
But, yeah.
So I guess that's the end for the show tonight. Thanks for joining us in the live chat, and thanks for listening. If you have any feedback, email canhammer.podcast@gmail.com or visit us on the web at www.oneplusarmor.com for more information. So I guess we'll end it right there. Please switch over to Frontline. Actually, our feed will switch over to Frontline Gaming any minute now, right?
Yep. Sure will.
So you can just follow through and you'll get redirected there. And so have a good night, guys. Bye.
Thanks for watching.
Good night. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us.